I thought my wife was cheating. Turns out she was sent to destroy me. What started as heartbreak became a war, and I don't lose wars. Jackson Cole moved quietly through the cool stillness of his lakefront home, the smooth hardwood beneath his feet reminding him of the early mornings he used to greet during his years in covert ops. At 43, Jack's frame still bore the disciplined muscle and alertness forged during 2 decades in military intelligence. Though he'd stepped away from government service nearly a decade ago, his company, Ironclad Security Group, delved into darker waters than most federal agencies dared to acknowledge. He paused in the hallway just outside the softly lit bedroom, watching his wife, Rachel, as she slept soundly. 11 years of marriage, and still, in the moonlight that spilled across her auburn curls, she looked almost angelic. A sharp, familiar tightness crept into his chest. He already knew. Had known for months. But in his world, acting without the full intel was a recipe for disaster. He needed every angle, every detail, before anything else. Another late one? Rachel mumbled sleepily, not opening her eyes. Yeah, he replied, his voice calm. Situation in Munich's under control. The lie rolled off his tongue like second nature. In truth, he hadn't left the country. He'd been here, setting up the final layers of surveillance in the same lake house where Rachel had been meeting her lover for the past 3 months. I'll be up in a bit, he added before heading into his study. There, Jack pulled open a concealed panel beneath his desk. From its velvet-lined recess, he retrieved a slim flash drive. Its contents would wreck most men. But Jack wasn't most men. On that drive were videos, hours of footage, showing Rachel with Tyler Brennan, the charming district attorney they'd met at a charity auction the year prior. Jack had welcomed Tyler into their circle, even opened up during their weekly tennis matches. That trust now burned like acid. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was calculated. He slipped the flash drive into his laptop and cued the latest recordings. Something was off. What had once been a string of passionate trysts now looked like covert briefings, furtive whispers and veiled references. They weren't just having an affair anymore. They were plotting. His phone lit up with a secure message from Mia, his most trusted field agent at Ironclad. Got a hit. Brennan's linked to the Horizon cartel. He's shielding their interests on the West Coast. There was a possibility that Rachel didn't know the full game she was part of, or maybe she did. Jack's jaw clenched as the implications set in. The Horizon cartel wasn't some back-alley crime ring. It was a calculated, far-reaching network of corruption and violence. One Jack had been covertly investigating for the Department of Justice under deep cover for the last 2 years. 3 of his former teammates had been silenced by that same syndicate. This wasn't just a betrayal. Could be a full-scale intelligence breach. His burner phone, reserved only for top-clearance government ops, vibrated with a new message. Delivery confirmed for tomorrow. Extraction protocol approved. The sender ID was simply V. Vincent Calloway, the Deputy Director of DOJ's Special Operations and Jack's handler. So it was happening. His cover on the Horizon investigation was about to be lifted. The finish line was in sight, but the road ahead had turned treacherous. The truth settled in like lead in his gut. Tyler wasn't just the man sleeping with his wife. He was a plant, maneuvering his way through Jack's personal life to gauge just how much Jack knew about the cartel's infrastructure. And Rachel? Whether she was being used or had joined the conspiracy willingly, he didn't know yet. The faint sound of footsteps outside his study broke the silence. Rachel. Jack quickly closed the surveillance window and pulled up a spreadsheet of client billing statements. Seconds later, she appeared in the doorway and padded quietly into the room. Couldn't sleep? She murmured, draping her arms over his shoulders. The perfume she wore, once a comforting detail in his day, now made his stomach turn. He reached up and lightly patted her hand, the way he used to without thinking. Just closing up some reports, he said evenly. Go on back. I'll be up in a few. She lingered a second longer, then turned without a word. As her footsteps receded down the hall, Jack stared at the screen, but he wasn't reading. He was calculating. Was Rachel simply collateral damage in Tyler's deception, or was she helping him dismantle Jack's life from the inside? 3 days later, Jack returned from a legitimate business meeting in Chicago to find the quiet edges of his home laced with unease. His study door sat slightly ajar. The air inside was unsettled. He scanned the room. His decoy safe, intentionally placed and designed to look impenetrable, had been cracked open with surgical precision. Files were rifled through, pages shifted, but not missing. The real safe, concealed beneath the floorboards, remained untouched. They hadn't found it. Not yet. But the message was clear. They were getting bolder. And they were getting close. The forged documents, carefully planted to suggest Jackson's firm was funneling illicit funds, had vanished from the decoy safe. That alone told him everything he needed to know. The trap had been triggered. He grabbed his phone and dialed his security director. "Initiate Blackwater Protocol," he said flatly. Within the hour, Ironclad's high-priority assets were locked behind military-grade encryption. Emergency countermeasures activated. Backup servers spun into isolation mode. The entire network shifted into lockdown. Jackson's top-tier field operatives were discreetly briefed. There had been a breach. And then he waited. From his study, he monitored the garden cameras. Rachel stood outside, phone to her ear, pacing. Her movements were sharp, urgent. She looked rattled. That night, she pulled out all the stops. His favorite meal, his preferred whiskey poured without him asking, her hands soft on his shoulders, her eyes searching his face like they used to when they were still in love. Any other man might have mistaken it for remorse. A final attempt to rekindle a strained marriage. "I've been thinking," she said softly, topping off his glass. "That trip you mentioned? Bali sounds like heaven right now." Jack studied her as she spoke. Too eager. Too precise. The timing was no coincidence. A clean getaway, he thought grimly. He lifted the glass and smiled. "Bali," he echoed, swirling the drink. "Might be just what we need." The first sip stung a little, too bitter for the smooth-aged whiskey he knew by heart. When she turned her back, he tilted the glass over a potted fern nearby, letting the amber liquid seep silently into the soil. "Maybe next month," he muttered, feigning a yawn. "This procurement contract's eating me alive." An hour later, Jack lay motionless in bed, his breathing deep and heavy, mimicking the drug's effects. Rachel crept from under the sheets and disappeared into the master bathroom, phone pressed to her ear. "It's done," she whispered. "We've got maybe 8 hours before it wears off. That's more than enough time to finish everything and get out." From his place beneath the covers, Jack listened, every word carving another notch into his resolve. She went on, calmly explaining the plan. The transfer of his liquid assets. The final phase of Troy's scheme to frame him with fabricated proof of laundering money for global arms traffickers. When she finally returned and slipped into sleep, Jack rose quietly from the bed. The time for questions had passed. Now came the reckoning. By dawn, Jack had cleaned up every trace. The tainted whiskey was gone, the real evidence, his hard-won intelligence against the Horizon cartel, now stored in a secure location off-site, triple encrypted and logged under a dead-drop alias. He reached out to Vincent with an encrypted message. The deception had gone operational. "Let it play through," Vincent replied. "We need to see just how far this web extends." 2 days later, while Jack was reviewing logistics projections at his desk, the front door exploded inward. "Police. Hands where we can see them." 4 officers charged in, weapons trained on him. "Jackson Cole, you're under arrest for conspiracy to launder money and aiding a criminal syndicate," barked the lead officer, a tall man with hard eyes and a tight jaw. Jack didn't resist. He slowly stood, offered his wrists and let them cuff him. His gaze drifted to the entryway. Rachel stood there, tears streaking down her face, trembling like a woman in fear. Just behind her stood Tyler Brennan, his hand resting gently on her shoulder, comforting, possessive. It was theater. And Jack knew it. "He's not who you think he is," Rachel said between sobs. "I found proof of everything. He's been funneling money to criminals. I had to turn him in. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do." Her voice cracked perfectly and Jack nearly laughed. She could have been nominated for an award. Instead, he just watched her, eyes unreadable, committing every detail to memory. As they let him out, Jack moved without resistance, his mind razor-sharp. He read every badge number, every nameplate. Noted each break in protocol during their search. This wasn't law enforcement. This was a performance. And he was their chosen villain. At the station, Jack sat in the sterile chill of the interrogation room. He said nothing, only folding his arms and waiting. When a grizzled detective named Pullman entered, Jack didn't flinch. Pullman tossed a thick manila folder onto the table. "Your wife handed this over willingly," he said, eyes hard. "Bank wires to foreign arms dealers. Encrypted messages. Hidden accounts in 6 countries." He leaned closer, lips curling. "Your little security company was just a front." Jack flipped the folder open. He scanned the fabricated financials, offshore wire logs, ghost communication threads. They were good, better than most, but he knew what to look for. The Bishop Syndicate had spun a perfect narrative, one that mirrored his own investigation. Only now he was painted as the mastermind behind it. They'd flipped the script flawlessly. But Jack wasn't out of moves yet. "I'd like to make my phone call now," Jack said, his voice calm and measured. They gave him a private room and a landline. He dialed one number. No introductions. No pleasantries. Just a coded sentence and a name. 20 minutes later, the temperature in the police station shifted like a storm rolling in. Whispered conversations floated through hallways. Officers exchanged wary glances toward the interrogation wing. Then the door opened and everything changed. Police Chief Raymond Voss stepped inside, his face a shade redder than usual, trailed by a tall woman in a dark blazer stamped with crisp FBI lettering. Jack recognized her immediately, Special Agent Kelly Donovan. She was the federal liaison assigned to the Horizon case. "Release him. Now," Chief Voss said, his voice clipped. Detective Pullman hesitated, confusion spreading across his face. "But Chief, we've got, his wife gave us." "I said uncuff him," Voss snapped, cutting him off. As the cuffs came off, Jack flexed his wrists briefly, the skin still indented. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Voss personally led Jack to his office, where Rachel was already waiting. Her face had gone pale, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Across from her sat Tyler, still holding onto his courtroom charm, though beads of sweat clung to his brow. "Ma'am," Voss said, fixing Rachel with a cold stare. "You have no idea who you were messing with. And now you've made a very serious mistake." Jack said nothing. He just watched her. He saw it hit her, realization dawning like ice cracking across a windshield. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was something far bigger. "Jackson, I can explain," she said quickly, voice trembling. But she was cut off. "Mrs. Cole," Agent Donovan interjected. "Mr. Brennan. You're both now considered persons of interest in a federal investigation. I suggest you find legal counsel immediately." Tyler straightened, trying to regain his swagger. "This is outrageous. I'm the district attorney, for God's sake." "Former district attorney," came a voice from the hallway. Vincent Calloway entered with quiet authority, 2 U.S. Marshals in tow. "As of an hour ago, the governor has suspended you, pending the outcome of this investigation." Rachel's mouth opened, then closed again. Tyler sat frozen. As they were escorted out, Vincent turned to Jack. "You sure you don't want protective custody? This is going to escalate." Jack shook his head. "No. Let them think they're still in control. If they're desperate, they'll make mistakes. And when they do, they'll lead us right to the core of the Horizon leadership." The endgame had just begun. That night, Jack returned to a house that felt more like a hollow shell than a home. Rachel was gone. She'd taken only the essentials: clothes, toiletries, the necklace he'd given her on their 5th anniversary. On the kitchen island, a handwritten note waited, the ink smudged slightly at the edges. "I'm sorry. I couldn't stay. I was scared, when I found out what you were really involved in. I had to protect myself." He let out a breath, slow and bitter. The irony wrapped around him like cold steel. She feared him. And the man who'd poisoned her mind was the one truly guilty. Later that evening, Bianca arrived with the latest intel. Her voice was low, clipped, professional but tinged with anger. "We confirmed it. Brennan accessed classified DOJ files on Horizon 3 months ago," she said. "He's their legal fixer. No question now." She laid a thin folder on the table and opened it. "More than that, we've traced encrypted messages between him and Philip Rossi. If Rossi's not the second in command, he's at least running the West Coast." Jack's eyes flicked over the screenshots. Secure messages. Meeting locations. Wire transfers. "And Rachel?" he asked quietly. Bianca hesitated, then continued. At first she didn't know. She genuinely believed she was having an affair with a respected district attorney. But once Brennan figured out who you really were, he flipped the story. Told her you were a deep-cover asset laundering money for syndicates. She bought it. The hurt sat in Jack's chest like a blade turned inward. It wasn't just betrayal. It was belief. She believed that version of him. For 2 weeks, Jack played the long game. He let Rachel and Brennan believe the storm was passing, that loopholes in the investigation were unraveling the case. Controlled leaks were fed to media contacts. Legal filings were accidentally misfiled. The illusion was perfect. Behind the curtain, Ironclad watched everything. Brennan made contact with Philip Rossi, begging for an exit strategy. A new identity. Safe passage out of the country. Rachel, now frantic, attempted to break into Jack's offshore accounts. Ones she didn't know were decoys. Every attempt was logged, her every keystroke monitored. But Jack's fight wasn't only psychological. The Horizon Syndicate had realized their plan had failed. So they went loud. 3 ironclad agents were ambushed in Marseilles. A massive digital assault battered their encrypted servers. And someone planted a car bomb in Jack's vehicle. He survived, but just barely. Shrapnel peppered his right side and his collarbone cracked on impact. He spent a week recovering under armed guard. On the 7th day, just after dawn, a knock came at the door. An unexpected guest had arrived. It was Naomi, Rachel's younger sister, who came to see him. Jack was still healing in a private hospital wing, stitched up and bandaged, the ache in his shoulder a constant reminder of how close he'd come to dying. "She called me," Naomi said quietly as she sat beside his bed. "She's scared." Jack looked up. "Scared of what?" "She thinks you're hunting her. She says you're not the man she thought you were." He didn't react, just studied Naomi's face. "And what do you think?" Naomi's expression tightened, her voice steady. "I think my sister made the biggest mistake of her life, and now she's trying to justify it by painting you as the villain." She reached into her coat and handed him a small USB drive. "She asked me to get this from her safety deposit box. I looked at it before I came." Jack took it. "What's on it?" Her voice faltered. "Stuff that scared me." He plugged it into his encrypted laptop later that night, heart pounding, not from surprise but from grim certainty. The footage showed Rachel meeting with Philip Rossi, twice, long before Tyler Brennan ever entered the picture. Financial documents detailed large deposits into a private account in her name, wired from shell companies tied to the Horizon Syndicate. And then the photos. One image froze Jack in place. Rachel, dressed in black, standing at the back of a military funeral. The service was for Marcus Hale, one of Jack's closest friends. Marcus had died in a car bombing 3 years ago. A hit Jack now knew came straight from Horizon. Rachel had been there. Watching. Mourning. Pretending. She was part of this from the beginning, Jack murmured to himself, the final truth settling like stone in his chest. Naomi had cried as she left the hospital. "I didn't know who she'd become." "I'm sorry, Jack." He believed her. And that's when something inside him shifted. This wasn't just about gathering evidence anymore. Rachel hadn't simply betrayed him. She'd played a role, willingly or not, in the deaths of his friends. And it wasn't a coincidence. She hadn't fallen for the wrong man or gotten caught up by accident. She had been planted. He called Vincent. "I need full autonomy," Jack said. Vincent's reply was hesitant. "The DOJ can't sign off on what you're thinking." "Then I'm on leave. Indefinitely." With that, Jack disappeared from official channels. He reached out to people from the old world, men and women who owed him everything, those who operated off the grid. Intelligence officials with secrets to protect. Veterans with no allegiance left but to each other. He sold the lake house. Cashed out of his visible assets. Disappeared from the investigation entirely, or so it seemed. To Rachel and Tyler it looked like retreat. As if he'd given up. But Jack was still watching. From the shadows where they'd first come for him. He now waited. And this time it would be his move. In truth, Jack wasn't retreating, he was orchestrating the final act. 3 months after the staged arrest, he sat alone in a remote rental cabin in northern Montana. A blanket of snow covered the hills outside, but inside, a half-dozen live feeds flickered across his laptop screen, casting pale light across the room. On one of them, Rachel and Tyler lounged in the polished living room of a high-rise condo in downtown Vancouver. They looked relaxed. Content. Smug. They thought the danger had passed. They believed the charges had collapsed. What they didn't know was that the accounts funding their new life, the anonymous offshore funds they'd begun dipping into, had been set up by Jack himself. Years ago. Crafted precisely for this moment. Funds that stayed invisible until he decided it was time to expose them. "They're moving the money today," Bianca's voice came through a secure satellite call. $5 million to the Cayman account. "Exactly as you predicted." Jack gave a slight nod. She couldn't see him, but she'd know. "And Rossi?" he asked. "Confirmed," Bianca said. "Meeting them at the harbor property tonight. And there's chatter that Bishop might make an appearance." That gave him pause. The leader of Horizon, only ever referred to as Bishop, was a ghost. Years of surveillance, infiltration, even joint international task forces, and no one had ever gotten close. The structure was too insulated. Every operative only knew the name above theirs. Bishop was a phantom stitched together through whispers. Tonight might change that. "All teams ready?" Jack asked, eyes never leaving the screens. "Standing by on your go," Bianca replied. "Vincent's task force is shadowing too," she added. "Unofficially." Jack closed the laptop and checked his watch. Time. That evening, 2 black sedans arrived at an old warehouse on Vancouver's industrial harbor. Surveillance drones and thermal cameras recorded every angle as Tyler and Rachel stepped out, visibly tense. They were greeted by Rossi's men and escorted inside. The warehouse, once abandoned, had been repurposed into a mobile command post. Armed guards flanked high-end tech stations, and the lighting was dim but purposeful. Inside, Philip Rossi waited with 5 senior Syndicate lieutenants, their body language taut with readiness. The transfer went through, Tyler announced. $5 million. We want what was promised. New IDs, Rachel added. Passports. Safe houses. The works. Rossi nodded slowly, calculating. Bishop is very pleased, he said. Embedding yourselves in Cole's life, manipulating him, setting him up, took patience. But the payoff is worth it. Rachel stepped forward, voice sharp. I gave everything, she snapped. Years of my life. I deserve more than just protection. A new voice cut through the shadows, calm, commanding, and cold. Of course you do. A tall man stepped into view. His silver hair was combed back neatly, his suit immaculate. He looked more like a retired diplomat than the leader of one of the world's most ruthless crime syndicates. But Jack knew who he was. At last, Bishop had shown his face. You've earned your place in our circle, my dear. The man who stepped from the shadows was no myth. He was real. The elusive leader of the Horizon Syndicate, Bishop, had finally revealed himself. From a black SUV parked across the street, Jack watched through the hacked security feed. The image flickered slightly, but it was clear enough. For the first time he saw the face of the man responsible for the deaths of friends, the dismantling of careers and years of blood-soaked betrayals. Inside the warehouse, Bishop continued, his voice smooth and clinical. The ironclad issue is nearing resolution. Jack Cole is discredited, cut off from his network, emotionally compromised. And that last part is the most important. Pain makes people sloppy. Tyler's jaw tightened. I didn't sign up to kill him. That wasn't our deal. Bishop let out a cold, humorless laugh. Your comfort, Eric, is irrelevant. You're no longer a district attorney, you're a fugitive. Your only remaining worth is helping us tie up loose ends. Before another word could be spoken, the warehouse lights snapped off. Total darkness swallowed the room. Seconds later, backup generators hummed to life, bathing the space in a low, pulsing red glow. The surveillance monitors went dark. What's happening? Rachel hissed, backing toward Rossi. Perimeter breach, one of Rossi's men barked into his comm, all external guards are down. We're compromised. Bishop's smile faded. Cole, he muttered. All at once, the warehouse doors sealed with a mechanical groan. A fine, nearly invisible mist hissed from the ceiling vents. Yes. One by one, guards staggered, coughing, eyes wide as they reached for their weapons, only to collapse before their fingers touched triggers. Only Rossi, Tyler, and Rachel managed to escape to Bishop's inner sanctum, a reinforced office nestled deep in the back. As the heavy door sealed behind them, Bishop moved with unnerving calm, pressing a panel embedded in the bookshelf. This, he said, keying in a code, is why I always plan for contingencies. The panel slid open with a hiss, revealing a dark passageway beyond. But they didn't step forward. Because Jack Cole was already standing in the entrance. Gun in hand. Ice cold. Voice steady. Hello, Bishop, Jack said. Or should I call you by your real name? He took a step forward, weapon unwavering. Walter Kingston. Former deputy director of the CIA. For the first time the mask slipped. The man known as Bishop, the master puppeteer behind so many atrocities, blinked. A flicker of recognition. And fear. Jack's face didn't change. You remember me. And now you understand, this ends tonight. Cole, I have to admit, I'm impressed, Bishop said with a smirk, trying to mask the unease in his voice. Jack stepped deeper into the office, his weapon steady. The knockout gas? That was just for the warehouse floor. Non-lethal. Your men will live, though when they wake up, they'll be in federal custody. Bishop's eyes darted toward the sealed escape tunnel, then back. Whatever they're offering you to bring me in, I can triple it. You know I can. Jack shook his head slowly. This was never about money. Rachel took a trembling step forward, tears streaking her face. Jack, please. I can explain. No, he cut in sharply. Save it. I didn't have a choice, she said, desperation rising. They threatened my family. Jack's expression didn't change. I found your mission file, Rachel. The one Bishop filed 8 years ago when he recruited you. That wasn't coercion. That was strategy. You were handpicked, trained, inserted into my life. His voice dropped, cold and steady. You were never my wife. You were his operative. He turned to Tyler. And you? I brought you into my home. Trusted you. Was any of it real? Tyler couldn't meet his eyes. It's just business, Jack. Nothing personal. Jack's jaw tightened. That's your mistake. You made it personal when you came after my team. When you got them killed. Outside, the rumble of helicopter rotors grew louder as spotlights bathed the warehouse roof. Sirens echoed in the distance. You're working with the feds? Rossi asked, disbelief painted across his face. After they cut you loose? Jack glanced at him. I'm not working with anyone. He pulled a small device from his coat and checked the timer. In about 5 minutes, Special Agent Donovan's team will breach this building. They'll find everything they need to put you all away. He paused. But I'm here for something else. He pressed a button on the device. Behind him, a panel in the wall hissed open, revealing a fortified safe hidden in the foundation of Bishop's office. Your little insurance policy, Jack said. All that blackmail you've collected over the years, judges, generals, senators, the real foundation of your power. Bishop's eyes widened. He lunged, but Jack caught him mid-motion and slammed him against the wall, pinning him with a forearm to the throat. That's federal property. Bishop hissed. No, Jack replied, voice like steel. As of 2 hours ago, it's evidence in an international terrorism case, authorized by executive order. He opened the safe, retrieved a hard drive wrapped in cold steel casing, and slipped it into an interior pocket of his coat. The sirens grew louder. Jack stepped back, weapon still trained, eyes locked with the man who had nearly destroyed everything. Game's over, he said. In a last, frantic act, Rachel reached into her purse, fingers wrapping around the grip of a small pistol she had hidden away. She raised it toward Jack, eyes wide, breath ragged. He didn't even flinch. Did you really think I'd let you carry a live weapon anywhere near me? He said quietly, not a trace of fear in his voice. She pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. I replaced the firing pin 3 days ago, he said, stepping toward her. Right after your meeting with Rossi at the Fairmont. Rachel's shoulders sagged. The fight drained from her face, replaced with crushing defeat. Jack turned to the others. Agents will breach the compound in under 2 minutes, he announced, walking to the office door. Bishop, you'll be charged with treason. Rossi, international terrorism. Tyler, conspiracy and systemic corruption. He looked back at Rachel, at the woman he had once imagined a future with. And you, he said quietly, will face charges as an accessory to the murder of 3 federal contractors. Men I served with. Men I called friends. Tyler stepped forward, voice panicked. You're just going to leave us? Let us rot in prison? Jack paused, his hand on the doorframe. No, he said flatly. You should consider yourselves lucky. He looked at each of them, eyes dark. What I wanted to do would have been much worse. With that, he walked out. Behind him, the steel warehouse reverberated with the thunder of federal agents storming the building, shouts echoing through the corridors. It was over. 1 month later. Jack stood barefoot on the back deck of a quiet home on the Oregon coast, a whiskey glass in hand. The sky blazed orange and gold as the sun sank below the horizon. Bianca leaned against the railing beside him. Vincent stood to his left, watching the sea. Horizon's done, Vincent said. Bishop's entire infrastructure is ashes. Not a single name left off the map. Most people wouldn't have blamed you, he added after a pause. After what they did. Jack took a slow sip. Death would have been too easy, he said, eyes fixed on the waves. This way, they have decades to sit in silence. To remember. To regret. Bianca turned slightly toward him. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? The wind picked up, cool and clean. Jack didn't answer immediately. He watched the last sliver of sunlight vanish into the ocean's edge, the shadows growing longer around them. His expression hardened, not with hatred but with something deeper. Resolve. Some betrayals, he said, can't be forgiven. His voice dropped. Some debts can only be paid in full. He raised his glass to the darkening sky. To absent friends. And the sea carried the silence forward.